When I started gardening, my typical garden yield used to be small and mostly leaves. I took it from small yields to an abundance like this over past 3 years. The secret is simple: using common sense, otherwise known as permaculture. Over the past 5 years, permaculture has not only made my garden more productive, it has also helped me to overcome the challenges of the limited and tricky landscape that I have. Today, I will simplify the permaculture principles so that you can also take advantage of it, no matter what kind or size of garden you have. Yes, even if you have a container garden, you can use permaculture to make it better. Case in point, I grow my herbs in these small containers, and my wife uses them a lot in kitchen. So I started keeping the herb containers right next to our kitchen door in zone 1. Following the zoning idea, the plants that need more attention, which are usually the ones planted in containers because they need frequent watering, are placed closer to my kitchen door. Our composter is also placed very close to our kitchen door because we need to compost the kitchen waste every day. All of these are in zone 1, which is the area that is easily accessible and frequently visited. In zone 2, which is slightly further away from my house, I plant my annual vegetable garden with plants like tomatoes, peppers, kale, beans, etc. These plants need attention on a weekly basis. For example, watering or picking harvest or pest prevention. Zone 3 is where I have my fruit trees, which need maintenance once or twice a year, and harvesting is needed once a year. These areas are slightly away from my house, and I do not visit them as frequently. Simply put, plants that you use more, plant them closer to you in zone 1. The ones you use less can be planted further away. This is exactly why I call permaculture as a collection of concepts that put common sense into gardening and make our life easier, just like the permaculture zone principle we just saw. The very first year of my gardening, I got just one tomato from my garden because I planted the tomato in the raised bed that was already there when we bought this house. This raised bed was underneath a willow tree. There was too much shade for tomatoes to grow. I realized my mistake, and that fall I spent time observing where I get most sun in my garden, where I get partial shade, and which area is completely shaded. Based on this observation, over the next 4 years, I built my garden in such a way that now I use the sunny areas as well as shaded areas of my garden to grow food. I decided to work with what I got instead of working against it, which again is an important permaculture principle. I plant leafy vegetables in shaded parts and let the sun-loving plants grow in the sunny garden. Just by observing and interacting with the space and resources I had, I'm now able to grow enough produce to meet my family's need for almost 3/4 of a year. Observing and interacting is one of the core principles of permaculture, and in my opinion, it is the one that makes the biggest difference. I will never forget the very first time I planted tulips. My front yard looked so beautiful with many tulips growing in an arch. But soon the flowers were gone. The plants started to dry out, and all of a sudden, the same garden started to look ugly. I then realized that if I want to create constant beauty and interest in my garden, I need to grow a variety of plants that shine at different times of the year. This idea created an amazing advantage on the side for me, all by accident. You see, I can't eat just flowers, so I decided to do edible landscaping, which I have a full video dedicated to, and I will link on the end screen. So, with growing a diversity of plants, I made my garden beautiful and created an abundance by accident, because now my garden keeps producing one or the other kind of food throughout the growing season. If one food crop fails, I always have few other crops growing, which always brings food to my dinner table. So you see, this fail-proofs my garden. Diversity is the permaculture principle that makes sure you succeed at gardening by making sure there is always something growing and providing for you. It even benefits the pollinators so much. This year, I had these two beds full of kohlrabi and the damage done by cabbage worms was minimal. I did not spray any Bt or diathermous earth. I was very surprised with it because this is something I wanted to achieve from the beginning. And finally, it happened. How? I would try to plant in guilds, let a lot of plants go to flower, interplant herbs, and flower with veggies. Made fruit tree guilds by planting herbs at the base of the tree and strawberries too. So, a lot of companion planting, and I kept doing it every year. Finally, all of it came together, and my garden attracted a lot of beneficial bugs. Last year, I had so many ladybugs in my garden, a lot of wasps that hunt for cabbage loopers, and very less aphids. Creating guilds, which is nothing but a group of plants that benefit from each other, reduced the pest pressure from my garden immensely. I will be honest, when I started gardening, guilds and companion planting didn't seem to make difference. But every year, at a slow pace, I noticed an increase in the number of beneficial insects visiting my garden. So it takes time, but now I have proof that it works. In very similar way, making a video like this takes a long time and dedication. So a diversity of support from you with like or comment or share and a subscribe will take this information to others who may need it, and it will help this channel immensely. So please don't be shy to support my efforts here. The benefit of plant guilds and companion planting extends even further. See this small strawberry patch. It is part of the fruit tree guild for my grapes vine and my peach tree, which I sadly lost last year. We will talk about it at some other time. But if we focus on the strawberry patch, its job is to act as live mulch. It keeps the ground shaded, which keeps the moisture in the ground, which is what the plants need, and I get delicious strawberries out of it. So you see, same plant is serving so many purposes. This is called the stacking function in permaculture, which means same thing performs multiple functions. This tulip poplar tree is another such example of stacking function. This is the cause of a lot of shade in my garden, but I decided to not get rid of it because it is very useful. It is huge, so it shades my house from the evening sun, which makes my house more energy efficient. It creates great shade for my family to enjoy and play outdoors, even during intense summer. And in the fall, it sheds a lot of leaves, which I use to mulch my garden. Mulching with leaves keep the weeds away, keeps water from evaporating, which means I have to water the garden less. Saves me time and money because I don't have to buy mulch and I water less. When these leaves break down into humus, I put them on my garden beds, which adds organic matter to the soil. I even mulch my containers to conserve water and use Oya spikes for containers to make them self-watering. For my garden beds, I have soaker hose which gives water right at the roots of the plants, where it is needed the most. This way I'm not wasting water. Any plant that is done, I would chop and drop it to use as mulch. So here, I'm practicing many permaculture principles all at once. Water is a precious resource and we should use it wisely, which is why water efficiency is an important permaculture principle. So I'm using many strategies to be mindful of water usage. I have different kind of saucers placed under my containers, which collect rainwater, and then the container soaks this water up and I can skip watering that week. I even try to harvest snow whenever I need it. I use all my garden waste as mulch. I chop the fallen sticks with this wood chipper, which is very handy. I will link it in the description if you're interested. Even for annual plants, like this tomato plant that I grew from seed, it gave me delicious tomatoes, and at the end of season, I chop and drop it, turn it into mulch, and in this way I close the loop, which is another permaculture principle. Closing the loop means you create a system to achieve a goal, and once the goal is achieved, you either reuse it or recycle it within the same system. This way, you create no waste and reduce your dependency on external resources. Here, I am composting these tomato plants by chopping and dropping used plants. I also have an actual composter in which I compost my kitchen waste and use the compost from it in my garden. Notice that this composter is placed in an area which is shaded almost all the time, and this is a very narrow space, but I was able to put this to use as well. In fact, this whole shaded area creates a small microclimate where some of the plants thrive. I have this gooseberry plant in this area as well. In the beginning, I planted it in a more sunny spot, but this plant struggled a lot. So I moved it here to see if it would survive. And since then, it has tripled in size. It even made a lot of gooseberries last year. Microclimates are these small pockets of areas in a garden where the light and temperature may be very different from rest of your garden. The permaculture principle of microclimates encourages us to find out how we can use such spaces. You may have many areas in your garden too, which may feel like a waste of space, but I would implore you to try to grow different kind of plants there and see which one works the best, or use it for storage or a composter. The options are endless. A lot of us let our front yard space go to waste, but with picking the right kind of plants and edible landscaping, front yards can be put to use as well. I have it all covered in the video linked on screen, so check it out next. Thanks for watching.